Great to see you, everyone, and welcome to another episode of This Week in CA Football. I'm Bobby Broyles along with Rob Washburn. The last Saturday of September is already upon us, but before we look too far ahead, Rob, let's recap a wild Saturday night of conference play.
What an exciting night of CA football action we had as two more conference games came down to the wire. In a matchup of nationally ranked squads, Villanova and Towson combined for more than 1,000 yards of offense before the Wildcats pulled out a 52-45 overtime victory to improve to 4-0 for the first time since 2009. Quarterback Daniel Smith led a 65-yard drive in the final 2 minutes of regulation to set up a game-tying 45-yard field goal by Duquesne, and then scored his sixth touchdown of the game on a 2-yard run in overtime for what proved to be the game-winning score. The Tigers got a tremendous performance from quarterback Tom Flacco, who threw for 304 yards and ran for 110, as Towson rallied from a 14-point deficit to take the lead in the fourth quarter, but Villanova was able to get a stop on a 4th-and-1 play to take the win. It was a similar storyline in Durham, New Hampshire, as UNH held a 24-10 fourth-quarter advantage over Rhode Island, only to see the Rams' quarterback Vito Priori convert a pair of fourth-down plays on a 77-yard TD drive that knotted the game at 24 with a minute and a half to go. However, Wildcats' true freshman quarterback Mac Brosmer was unfazed by the moment, connecting on a 41-yard strike to Brian Espinette that set up Jason Hughes' game-winning 29-yard field goal as time expired. Now, the CA posted a perfect 5-0 mark its non-conference FCS foes as Albany, Delaware, JMU, Maine, and Stony Brook picked up victories. The league is now a staggering 21-4 in non-conference FCS games, and once again this week, 6 teams are ranked in the top 25. Finally, congratulations to Maine senior Ernest Edwards, who had kickoff returns of 195 yards for touchdowns in the third quarter at Colgate to earn Stats FCS Special Teams Player of the Week accolades. In case you're wondering, that's now 6 kickoff returns for touchdowns for Edwards in his outstanding career, and he currently leads the nation by averaging better than 40 yards per return this season.
Conference play picks up a little bit this week with 4 matchups on Saturday. Let's start with 2 top 25 matchups beginning in Elon as the Phoenix will host JMU on FlowFootball.com. And Rob, there are a lot of storylines going into this one.
Where do you even start when it comes to storylines in this game? First, it's a rematch of last year's epic showdown in Harrisonburg where the Phoenix knocked off the Dukes 27-24, ending JMU's 20-game conference winning streak. It's also the return to Elon for new JMU head coach Kurt Cignetti, who guided the Phoenix to back-to-back playoff appearances in his 2 years at the school and will go up against his former defensive coordinator, Tony Trisciani. But all that outside noise aside, it's a big matchup of 2 nationally ranked teams who each have their sights set on a CAA championship. JMU has won 3 straight since that season opening setback at West Virginia and has outscored its opponents 144-33 during that stretch. Quarterback Ben DiNucci is completing 74% of his passes and has thrown 7 TDs in his last 3 games, and his pool of talented receivers got even deeper last week with the return of Riley Stapleton, who made 5 catches in the win over Chattanooga. Duke can also move it on the ground with Percy O.J. Obasi rushing for a career-high 114 yards and 2 scores against the Mocs. Now, the Duke's defense hasn't given up more than 337 yards in the game all year and is allowing just 13 points per contest. Defensive end Rondell Carter has a league-high 6 tackles for loss and 5 quarterback hurries. Now, Elon's 2-2 after a very challenging early season schedule and needs to rebound from a 49-7 setback at Wake Forest last week. Quarterback Davis Cheek has thrown 8 touchdown passes this season and hasn't been picked off in his last 209 attempts. Top target Cortez Weeks has 15 receptions and has found the end zone in all 3 games he's played. Now, the Phoenix ran for 212 yards in last year's win over the Dukes, and the trio of Jalen Thomas, Sean McNair, and Breland Cyphers will try to replicate that effort. Defensively, a big key in last year's win was Elon's ability to put pressure on the quarterback as they recorded 5 sacks. It will be interesting to see if Marcus Willoughby and company are able to do that again.
The other top 25 conference matchup will be at 3:30 on FlowFootball.com as Villanova looks to build off that big win on the road last week, but the Black Bears come to town, who also are coming off an impressive road victory last Saturday.
You know, perhaps the most impressive part of the 4-0 start put together by Villanova is the fact that 3 of those wins have come on the road. Saturday, they're back at Villanova Stadium, though, looking to maintain the momentum against the defending CA champs. Now, the Wildcats' offense is averaging a league-best 42 points per game and hasn't been held to less than 34 all season. Quarterback Daniel Smith has accounted for an incredible 17 touchdowns in 4 games with a league-best 13 through the air and another 4 on the ground. Villanova is also the top running team in the CAA behind the play of the nation's fourth leading rusher in Justin Covington, who has topped the century mark in all 4 games and is coming off a career-best 194-yard effort last week. Now, the Wildcats' defense has also been solid, especially against the run, and is giving up less than 20 points per contest. Malik Fisher has been tough to handle up front with 4.5 sacks, and VU has also scored 3 defensive touchdowns. Now, this is a big game for Maine, which has already suffered a conference loss to Towson. Quarterback Chris Ferguson is one of the top passers in FCS, having thrown for nearly 1,300 yards, and the Black Bears have 5 receivers with at least 12 catches. Maine also got its running game on track in last week's win at Colgate as Joe Fitzpatrick topped the 100-yard mark. The key to this game might be whether Maine's vaunted black hole defense can slow Villanova down. The Black Bears recorded a season-high 8 sacks at Colgate last Saturday, with Max Roberts and Keon Whitaker providing much of the pressure. Maine held the Wildcats to just 181 yards a year ago and ended up winning 13-10 on a Kenny Doak field goal as time expired.
Also at 3:30 on FlowFootball.com, it will be a battle between 2 teams sitting at 2-2 as Albany continues their homestand as they face off with William and Mary.
Yeah, both of these teams have come off a very solid non-conference schedule and would like to open CAA play with a victory. Albany is unbeaten at home this season and cruised past Lafayette last week. Quarterback Jeff Undercuffler has thrown 4 touchdown passes in each of the past 2 games and has 12 on the year. Now, the Great Danes feature 2 of the league's top 5 receivers in Juwan Green and Jarrah Reeves, who have combined for 49 receptions and 8 touchdowns. They also have one of the CAA's most versatile backs in Carl Mofor, who has rushed for 402 yards and made 11 catches. Albany's defense has given up just 10 total points in its 2 home games. Eli Menser has been a standout for that unit with 5.5 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks, and 3 forced fumbles. Now, William and Mary gave FBS foe East Carolina all it could handle in a 19-7 setback last Saturday. The Tribe defense gave up just 1 touchdown in that game and has held 3 of its 4 opponents under 20 points. Much of that success has come by creating pressure with 11 quarterback sacks and 10 forced turnovers through 4 games. Offensively, dynamic freshman quarterback Hollis Mathis suffered a shoulder injury at ECU, and his status is unknown for Saturday. If he's unable to go, it will likely mean more carries for running back Owen Wright, who has picked up 224 yards and 3 touchdowns this season. Wide receiver Zach Burdick has also been the threat, topping the Tribe with 10 receptions, and he's averaging over 23 yards per catch.
At 7 o'clock on FlowFootball.com and Cox Your View, Stony Brook brings their 2-game winning streak into Meade Stadium against a Rhode Island team that is looking for their first win of the season after back-to-back heartbreaking losses.
Yeah, Stony Brook has pounded its 3 FCS non-conference opponents by a combined score of 106-30, but will get its first CAA test under the lights at Meade Stadium on Saturday. The Seawolves have been clicking on all cylinders offensively, piling up 601 yards in last week's victory over Fordham. Quarterback Tykel Fields threw for over 200 yards and 3 TDs on only 12 attempts last week, and his top 3 receivers are averaging better than 19 yards per reception for the season. Stony Brook's ground attack has also been equally as impressive, with Sapa Naget and Isaiah White both topping the 100-yard mark against Fordham. Defensively, the Seawolves have held all 3 of their FCS opponents to under 225 total yards and just 10 points. Augie Contresta tops the unit with 23 tackles, including 6 tackles for loss. Now, as you mentioned, no team has suffered more heartbreak than Rhode Island, which is 0-2 in CAA play after falling to New Hampshire on a last-second field goal last week, on top of that earlier triple overtime setback to Delaware. Offensively, the Rams feature one of the top air attacks in FCS, behind quarterback Vito Priori, who's averaging over 330 yards per game and is completing 62% of his passes. There's no better receiving combo than Aaron Parker, who ranks 2nd in FCS with 30 receptions for 515 yards and 2 touchdowns, and Isaiah Coulter, who had 10 catches for 105 yards and a TD against UNH last Saturday. A big area of concern for the Rams is shoring up that run defense, which will get a stern test against Stony Brook. Should Stony Brook decide to throw, Mamadou Mbai has intercepted a pass in all 3 games for Rhode.
Non-conference action on Saturday begins at 12:30 as Delaware visits Heinz Field to take on Pitt on the ACC regional networks and the Watch ESPN app.
Yeah, Delaware held off Penn 28-27 last Saturday to improve to 3-1, but hits the road this week to face ACC member Pitt. Now, quarterback Nolan Henderson performed well in his first career start, completing 20 of 29 passes for 260 yards and 3 touchdowns. 5 of those went to wide receiver Thyrick Pitts, who had a career-high 128 yards and a touchdown. To have a chance against Pitt, the Hens will need to get production from the running back tandem of Andre Robinson and Will Knight, who combined for over 100 yards against the Quakers. Delaware's defense will get a big test versus a Pitt offense that piled up 439 yards in that 35-34 victory over previously unbeaten UCF last week. Quarterback Kenny Pickett has passed for over 300 yards twice this season. Defensively, the Panthers recorded 6 sacks in the victory over the Knights.
At 1 o'clock on NBC Sports Boston and FlowFootball.com, New Hampshire looks to make it 2 in a row at home as they host Duquesne.
Yeah, New Hampshire should have plenty of momentum after that dramatic win over Rhode Island. True freshman quarterback Mac Brosmer took a big step in his development with that performance on the game-winning drive, and he finished with 184 yards and 2 touchdowns through the air and another score on the ground. The Wildcats also rushed for a season-best 229 yards against Rhode, with Evan Gray breaking loose for 123 yards on only 7 carries. UNH's defense limited the Rams to 10 points through the first 3 quarters last week and came up with its first turnover of the year. Prince Smith had a big night in the secondary with a career-high 13 stops. Now, Duquesne is the defending Northeast Conference champ, and they knocked off Towson in the first round of the playoffs a year ago. The Dukes are 2-1 after getting past Dayton 35-31 a week ago. All-America running back A.J. Hines, who's one of the best in FCS, missed last week's game, but Mark Allen rushed for 168 yards and 2 touchdowns in his absence.
Also at 1 o'clock, Richmond comes off their open week with a road trip to Fordham on Watch Stadium.
I'm sure Richmond is ready to get back on the field and erase the bad taste from that loss to Elon on September 14th. Quarterback Joe Mancuso is averaging 220 yards per game of total offense and tops the Spiders in both rushing as well as passing, but he's dealing with an injury and will likely split time again with Bo English. Richmond will look to get its rushing attack going again while continuing to target top receivers Charlie Fessler and Keeson Fuller, who have combined for 31 catches and more than 450 yards. Now, the Spiders' defense totally shut down Fordham a year ago, holding them to negative 3 yards rushing in a 52-7 win, and will look to do the same thing once again. The Rams dropped to 1-3 after a 45-10 loss at Stony Brook last week. Quarterback Tim DeMarat passed for 185 yards and a touchdown against the Seawolves.
And we wrap up at 4 o'clock on the SEC Network. Towson travels to the Swamp to take on the Florida Gators.
Certainly a tough challenge for Towson, which is coming off 2 physical down-to-the-wire conference games against Maine and Villanova, and now has to face unbeaten SEC power Florida in a difficult environment at the Swamp. One thing you know about a Rob Ambrose coach team, though, is that the Tigers will go down there with a plan and a mindset to pull off that upset. Quarterback Tom Flacco is coming off his best performance of the year last week with 414 yards of total offense, and running back Edie Thanrat has rushed for 7 touchdowns in the past 2 games. Now, the Tigers' defense has forced a league-high 12 turnovers and will need to get some of those this week to have a chance to knock off the Gators. Florida's defense has been stout so far this season, giving up only 285 yards and 11 points per game. Offensively, quarterback Kyle Trask threw for 293 yards and 2 touchdowns in his first career start last week as the Gators rolled over Tennessee 34-3.
As always, folks, casports.com/live scores is your source for live scoring and in-game live stats throughout the 5th week of the college football season.
And of course, you can continue to follow the league on our many social media platforms, such as facebook.com/CA Football and Twitter @CA Football using the hashtag CAFB.
Our on-campus series is back on the road this weekend at Albany for the big conference matchup between the Great Danes and the Tribe. Make sure to follow CA Football's social media outlets throughout the weekend for the latest on their trip. And next Thursday, we'll have a Going Deep feature on Albany. That is it from us today. Enjoy the games, everyone.